No, that's fine. And, okay, so we can start writing it. If you want to come out and do this.
Nothing's changed there. That homework done by the end of the class.
Actually, I've still got this
Can you come do this
program right here.
We don't need it, do we? Oh, we do.
You can
In
have
that
it.
case, I'll be gentle. Hey, another scarf?
Stop.
I love it. I'm gonna enjoy this. Be the bomb.
We can have a mustard seed shot here.
I heard wonderful things about you.
Now my agenda will pull up,
Sorry, that's good.
All right, we will start this evening's meeting. Holy smokes, can you hear me?
Bell's running.
Try it now? Much better? No? Better? Better? Well, is that better? That sounds better.
Sounds better to me.
Okay. First, I'd like to welcome everyone here to February 12th meeting, and would ask that everybody make sure that their phones are on silent as we are being streamed and don't need to be disrupted that way. Roll call show, all counselors are present. And moving on to item number 2, agenda review. We have a couple of items that were unintentionally, or is that the right word? They were left off by accident. So I would ask if anyone might have a motion.
I do have a motion. I would first like to move that we add Order 1823, approving a Class 3 Vinous-only liquor license and vitulers license for Nest Coffee LLC at 24 Main Street.
Okay, and
Should
I'm
I-
going to take them both at the same
Both
time.
at the same time. I'd also move that we add the committee representative reports to the agenda.
I would second both.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a vote on adding these 2 items to the agenda. All those in favor is passed unanimously. Great. Next item is a presentation on the Old Town Orono Fiber Corporation update. Belle.
Good evening. I'm Belle Ryder. I'm the Assistant Town Manager, and I also serve as the President and your representative on the Old Town Orono Fiber Corporation Board. I'm not sure if everybody knows the history of this effort that the town of Orono is undertaking with the University of Maine and the city of Old Town, so I thought I'd give you a brief history first and then an update as to where we are. The effort to bring high-speed fiber to the town of Orono really started back in 2007. There was an initiative called Gig.U. It was a national initiative to bring high-speed broadband to the communities that house research universities. As part of that initiative, we issued an RFP seeing if there were any companies that were interested in laying fiber optic cable in our community and offering high-speed broadband. We did have some initial interest, and then after fairly lengthy process, the company decided that it was not economically feasible for them to deploy fiber in our communities. That was about 2012, 2013. At that time, we decided that as a community, we wish to continue moving forward with the City of Old Town and the University of Maine in a partnership. We worked together. First, we formed, we signed a memorandum of understanding, and then we formed a nonprofit corporation called Old Town Orono Fiber Corporation, or for short, OTO Fiber. Jumping a few years in minor details, we eventually were awarded a grant from the Northern Border Regional Commission for $250,000. The Town of Orono Council voted to support that with a cash match, as did the City of Old Town, and the University of Maine is supporting it with in-kind support, primarily fiber that they already have on the pole. They are allowing us to do what's called an overlash, which means that we can just strap our fiber directly to their fiber, and we don't have to move any other fibers around on the pole. When you have to move cables on the pole, that's called make ready, and that's a significant cost in deploying fiber. So with that grant, we have been slowly working our way towards deploying a pilot project of approximately 3 miles in each community. We first undertook a feasibility study that was completed last summer. And then using the results of that study, we issued a design RFP, and we have in December recently awarded that to Tilson Technology, which is a Maine-based company, and we are working with them to determine the final scope and price for the contract, which I believe we settled on today, so that's good. With the funding, we are able to, we are designing a primary line that runs down Kelly Road. We actually installed that already, if you'll recall, as part of the Public Works Garage. We have a fiber on the poles that the Town of Orono owns. And then it will, the new fiber optic cable will run from the end of Old Kelly Road down Main Street to Bennick Road, and then out on Bennick Road a little bit past Noise. That is our primary route that will cover 3 miles, and then our secondary route, we are studying 2 additional neighborhoods in the hopes that we'll be able to stretch our deployment dollars a little bit further than estimated. So that's mostly where we are right now. As part of our process, we will begin to do more outreach and polling, particularly of people who are along the primary route and the secondary routes, to find out what take rate might be, what the interest is in the network, and then the idea behind this is that we would roll this out as a open access fiber network, so that any current internet service provider could come in, put their equipment into our head end, and then light up the customers.
So what speed are we talking?
That will depend a little bit on what the internet service providers want to offer, but our intent and what we will put out when we ask for service on this network is that for home users it would be a gigabit up and down. If you think right now if you're lucky, you're probably getting 20 megabits per second down and 5 up, and that would be if your network is pretty clear, you don't have a bunch of kids using your service, and your neighbors aren't all streaming the Olympics at the same time. And then for business owners, we would ask for service to be about 100 megabits per second symmetrical, so that means up and down. So if you're uploading information to the cloud, say for example you use a cloud service to store all your files, your speeds going up would be just as fast as your speeds coming down. And currently it's not like that. It's much faster coming down than it is going up.
Isn't Spectrum advertising 100 megs? Or megabytes?
They have advertised it. We do call and request that service and have not yet been able to have somebody say, yes, you can have that service and here's what the price is going to be.
And I thought they were 50 in town already. No?
Not in my neighborhood.
Yeah. So when you're talking about this, we've got 3 miles going from Kelly Road down to Bennett Road, and you're talking a couple of neighborhoods, and I'm assuming they'll be off Main Street.
The neighborhoods that we are currently exploring are the Noyes neighborhood and the Mahaney neighborhood, and then stretching into Oak Street, and then some of the downtown streets. Our primary interest in the neighborhoods and the route and the primary route is to find out what type of a take rate we might have so that we can sell the business case to deploy fiber across the town. So when we come down Main Street and Kelly Road and Bennett Road and then into those 2 sample neighborhoods, we're kind of taking a cross section of Orono.
That wasn't part of your feasibility study?
You can, it is part of the feasibility study. We asked the questions. We have the tentative answers, but you can't necessarily, I mean, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak, in that once it's actually on the ground, are they really going to take it? And the expectation is yes, it's significantly faster, and it depends on who replies to the ISP RFP.
Well, what's the estimated, I emphasize estimated timetable for this all to roll out?
So we expect that the construction piece will be completed by September of 2018, so this year. The construction piece itself is fairly quick. It really all depends on how many cables you have to move up and down the poles in order to find your own space. Particularly here in Orono, where we have a lot of University of Maine assets that we can attach to, that make-ready piece is eliminated, so that construction piece is fairly quick. And then the deployment out to customers might take a little bit longer because it will require an ISP to come in, put their equipment in, install it, and then get equipment on customers' homes.
Thanks, Bill. Anybody else have any questions for Bill? No? Thanks very much. We will follow it along. Right, moving on to item number 4, approval of minutes of January 8th, 2018. I'll take a motion.
Move approval.
Second?
All right, any questions, comments, corrections? None. I'll take a vote on approval of the minutes of January 8th, 2018. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Moving on to public hearings. Public hearing A, to consider a Class 3 Vinous-only liquor license and vitulers license for Nest Coffee LLC, 24 Main Street. Dave.
Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Mylan, Community Development Director, and the staff has conducted the inspections necessary for these licenses, and the staff is recommending approval.
Does anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license?
I have a question,
Okay, go ahead.
Dave. Am I reading it correctly that they are this is their initial request to the state for a liquor license?
That's correct, just for a Vinius license.
Okay.
That means only one?
That's correct, just one.
That means only one.
Yeah.
Correct.
Our understanding is they wish to serve mimosas.
Oh, I was going to ask, because the times they're open It's either wine at lunch or that's, but,
I think it's champagne with breakfast.
oh, okay. All right, well, no, that's, I'm not passing judgment here.
French have wine with lunch.
I'm just going to close public hearing A and move on to public hearing B. To consider the council chambers as an alternate polling location for small state elections, annual municipal elections held in March and state elections held in June. Shelley.
Hello, Shelley Crosby, Town Clerk here in Orono. You received your agenda and there were key points made about the possibility of using the council chambers for smaller state elections. The intent would be those elections in June. We already use our council chambers for our municipal elections. Those don't have to go through a state permitting process, but if it is a state election, it does have to have approval and review by the state. When we were prepping and going through the polling place change for the University of Maine, they did an audit of all previous polling places in Orono because Orono has changed and consolidated. And at that time, they realized that the council chambers had never really truly been approved. We had used it, and it was different back then. Now they are very stringent in regards to making sure that the location matches the footprint of foot traffic, ADA compliance, parking, and safety. So those are the areas that the state's interested in. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions from the public? Nope.
So I have a question. So you're saying that at some point there was a confirmation process we were supposed to go through to use this space for our elections, for state elections, and we are now going through that process so that we can use the space?
Prior to 2012, the state did not have the same applications process. And so the state in its own processes has changed how they list polling places. So since 2012, when they required this permitting process to happen, we had not submitted an application.
And will this building meet their requirements?
Yes, we assume it shall based on the criteria that we've been given. There are certain key officials that have to review the building. We have to supply floor plans, photographs, we have to examine doors, jambs, we have to look at the threshold of stepping up or down, stairs, elevator, and we're currently going through that process right now. If approved this evening, then everything would then go to the state, and they ultimately will have the final decision.
I just want to clarify, our fire marshal and our code enforcement officer have already gone through the criteria to ensure that we comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act and the various other thresholds that we have to. So based on conversations that Shelley has had with the state and what our local folks, safety folks are telling us, we have every reason to believe that we will get approval from the state.
Great. Thanks very much, Shelley.
Thank you.
I will close public hearing B and move on to acknowledgements from councilors. Megan, I'll start down with you.
Sure. Well, I had the privilege over the last 2 weeks of attending 2 theater productions that were within walking distance of my house here in Orono. I saw the True North Theater Company's The Lion in Winter at Old St. Mary's, and I also saw some theater company's Love Letters at Keith Anderson, starring a certain somebody on this council. Both wonderful productions, and it was just really refreshing that just in a, again, within 2 weeks, I could just walk to different theater events, and that's just wonderful. I love that this exists in our town, and I just want to congratulate everyone involved in those productions.
Thanks. Judy?
Nope.
Tom?
Yes, I'd like to once again say that our Public Works Department's done an excellent job. I see we had some more new equipment I hadn't seen recently, and I was out trying to play in the ice. And they came down with a new truck that has a interesting front-end plow on it that didn't fill my driveway, so life is good. I also attended the old St. Mary's show there, and those folks have done a wonderful job with restoring that whole building, and I want to thank them for making our community better.
Sam? Good. Lori?
My children get up early in the morning to deliver the paper, and they report that it's easygoing on Main Street early in the morning, even after we've had a lot of snow, and even when it's still snowing. So I know that our people who are maintaining our streets are not working at all hours of the night anymore. They're doing that in shifts, and that's better for their health and safety, and they're still doing a great job at getting the streets cleared. Appreciate that. And in addition to having one of our town councilors be the star of one of the shows that Megan mentioned, one of our town employees, one of our librarians, was also in the show with Sam. So, and very much appreciated the community theater.
Tom?
So I'd like to make a couple of acknowledgments. During the past month, several longtime Orono residents passed away, and I'd just like to acknowledge them. Barbara Dahl, who was a neighbor of mine on Bennett Road for 40 years plus, passed away this past month unexpectedly. George Bagley, an Orono businessman who for many years ran the nursery on Stillwater Avenue, which is now run by his daughter, passed away. And most recently, Sherm Hasbrook, who had done many, many things for the town of Orono. He was a founder of the Housing Association here in town, which their first project, as some of you know, was Talmar Wood, and they have grown to have 650 housing units, rental units in Penobscot and Hancock County. So tremendous accomplishments, and a lot of his effort is responsible for it. On a happy note, well, maybe a mixed note, I would like to acknowledge Judy Sullivan. Her last meeting is going to be in March, and I won't be here, so I want to take this time to thank you, Judy, for your work the past 6 years. You have added a great deal to the council and brought some things to our attention we might not have been focused on otherwise, and we wish you were going to continue with us.
Well, thank you,
I
Tom.
do.
Thank you, Tom. And time must fly when you're having fun, because it's been 9 years.
9 years, wow.
But thank you, I appreciate it, Tom. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And enjoy your warm, sunny climes. Well,
Thank you.
Cindy?
Yes, ma'am?
I don't normally speak during council acknowledgements, but I would also just recognize that Arthur Comstock
Yes.
passed away.
Thank you.
And he's done a lot for Orono.
Thank you. I was just going to chime in with everyone else saying that I've been very impressed with what Public Works can get accomplished. We've even received letters from citizens thanking us for them taking the extra efforts, and really appreciate everything they do. Moving on to unfinished business. Order 18-15, order accepting the FY17 Town of Orono financial audit. It was tabled at the January 9th, 2018 meeting. I'll take a motion, please.
Move to approve.
second.
All right. Sophie, is that you?
That's me. I gave a rousing presentation about the audit at our January meeting, and councilors all got copies of the audits. I have not heard from any councilor in the interim. Finance Committee has did a brief review of the audit as well, and asked that we have our audit team present to us, present to you, not to me, but to you. And what we've learned in the interim is that the principal who was responsible for our audit has left the firm and is now the finance director for the Greater Portland Council of Governments. So I have, I was able to work with Casey Leonard, who would be his supervisor. And Casey is going to meet with council via Skype or some form like that, video conference, on the 26th. So before our before our council workshop next week, we will have Casey talking to us. So I have put this on the agenda because to wait another month holds up our annual report another month. And Casey agreed that while you might have questions about the audit report itself is not going to change. And so I'm asking you to accept and file it now, knowing that you will have questions. And I hope if we have him dialing in to talk with us, folks could send me some questions so that we could have a nice dialogue. I've had lots of dialogue with him, so.
As Nancy can attest, I called in today going, what are we doing at 5:30 this afternoon? Only to find out it's next couple of weeks from now, so. So we'll get you questions. Does anyone else have any questions or comments before we take a vote?
No.
I mean, I think all of my questions can be answered. I don't think the audit will change because of them. So, given that, I will take a vote on Order 1815. All those in favor of accepting the audit? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item number 8, the consent agenda. I'll take a motion to move the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
All right. All those in favor? Tom, are you? Okay. Passes unanimously.
What happened to 1816?
Because 15 was tabled, it just moved up, so.
Okay,
All right.
sorry.
That's okay. Order, new business, Order 1820, order accepting the council chambers as an alternate polling location for small state elections. Annual municipal elections held in March and state elections held in June. I'll take a motion.
Move approval.
Second?
Whoa, you're getting quick down this end over here.
Efficient.
Does anyone have any further questions or comments about the polling locations?
I just appreciate the information that was provided. It makes it easy to make a decision for me.
Yeah. I think it makes some good sense to have another location that's a little smaller than the university. So, I will take a vote on Order 1820. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Order 1821, order approving an update to the zoning map of the town of Orono to include all approved map amendments and corrections since the November 14, 2001 effective date and April 7, 2010 amended map effective date. Section 18-102 of the Town of Orono Land Use Ordinance shall be amended as follows to reflect the newly adopted zoning map, including the townwide zoning map and the shoreland zone overlay map. So, okay. I'm not going to read the rest.
Sure.
I'll take a motion, please.
Move to approve?
Second.
All right. Yeah, no.
Those maps look great. Just kidding. Those aren't the maps.
There we go.
Good evening, my name is Jana Richards. I am the town planner. The most current zoning map that we're operating under right now was actually adopted in 2010. Since then, the council has held numerous public hearings and adopted changes to the map, including a zone change to extend the village commercial district down Forest Avenue. Corrections to errors carried over by a digitization issue that occurred when it went from the 2001 map to the 2010 map. 2 contract zoning agreements, and most recently the adoption of the Main Street Overlay District. The map for consideration, which is up here before you tonight, reflects these changes. These aren't new changes. All of the changes shown on the map have gone through the necessary process to amend the land use ordinance, including public hearings. In addition, I'm just going to go to this one. Go. After updating the map, it was noticed that it was difficult to distinguish between the shoreland overlay zones and the underlying town-wide zoning districts, and determined that two maps should be developed, one showing the town-wide zoning districts, which you just saw before, and this one showing shoreland zoning to better clarify the zones and be more distinguishable to the public. Both maps were reviewed by the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee and then recommended to the full council. There's also proposed draft language included before you today to update section 18-102 of the land use ordinance. That's in order to update the adoption and effective dates, and also to clarify the new titles of the maps, one for the town-wide zoning map, the other for the shoreland zoning map, which combined together make up the official zoning map for the town. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Jana? No? No? I think they reflect everything that we expected and have worked on. So given that, thank you very much. I will take a vote on Order 1821. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Order 1822, order authorizing the town manager to enter into a 5-year curbside refuse and recycling collection service contract extension with Pine Tree Waste Services, Inc. until June 30th, 2023. I'll take a motion, please.
Move approval.
Second.
All right. Sophie, that you?
I am filling in for Rob Yerksa today. We've actually talked with the Council Finance Committee about this twice. The town currently has a contract with Pine Tree, we have for the last several years, to pick up curbside solid waste collection once a week for residential households, customers, and once every other week for residential household recycling folks as well. Nothing about this contract changes what people do at their homes. This is simply an extension that we are suggesting, an extension of the existing arrangement. This contract is set to expire on June 30, 2017, our current contract. When we began to look at the economic landscape for putting this out to bid, we reviewed what other communities had for arrangements. We reviewed what was happening in the collection market in terms of companies that would likely bid on this. And what we discovered is that Casella has bought 2 of the companies that bid on the work last time. We don't have other large companies springing up to take on that level of work, and the other company went out of business. So the only other company that we see as a viable would be Waste Management. They have not bid on other municipal work in this region. They're actually working to, I think, get out of this region. And when they did bid on the work last time, they were the highest of all of the bidders that we received. So we came back to the committee and suggested that given the lack of competition in the marketplace and our level of satisfaction with Pine Tree, that we thought it might benefit the town for us to have Rob reach out to Pine Tree and try to negotiate a 5-year extension. We actually got terms better than what we had anticipated. They are simply jumping off from the final year in this contract and adding 4% per year for 5 years, which may sound like a lot, but when we get to the end, we're still under what the median bid was for the contract several years ago. So I think we're doing a service to the community by handling it in this manner. This contract continues collection in the same manner that they always have, includes a fuel surcharge that's listed in the background material that you received at $3.25. We pushed back a little bit on that after the Finance Committee meeting, and they have indicated that they are open to negotiate that number up. So the fuel would have to go higher up. And the only other substantial issue that was open at the committee meeting was what are we going to do if we end up having to bypass waste from the Fiberite facility where they will be taking it to waste management in Norwich Walk, because it's a significantly longer distance to go. And what we have come up with that I think both staff and Pine Tree are satisfied with is to say that is outside the scope of this contract. So we would sit down and negotiate it if that came to pass, and we'd have a better understanding of what the landscape was at that time. So we think we got a good deal. I hope you think we got a good deal, and we're hoping that you'll approve.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? No?
The only comment I have to make is a kind of a secretarial kind of comment. Frequently, the town manager is referred to as he. And I think we should make sure it reads he/she.
I'll come up with a good pronoun for that.
Yeah.
In the contract itself?
Yeah, I don't know if it's, I know on page 30, I just looked on, I think it's page 36, it references, it does pretty well in many places, but again, I'm sure it's because it's, anyway. It should be he/she.
I have become so immune to that, Judy, at this point that I read right over that. I might do parentheses, S parentheses, he after it. That way it's either she or he.
Yeah, well, you often see he/she, and if you don't care for that, the other one works, and that's fine with me.
I'll tell you that they is gaining traction, and that's actually not a joke. They there is gaining traction, and as an English teacher, I do suggest that my students use they there, even though their grammar checkers on their computers set off the bells and whistles. But that's the future, folks.
Good, because I've been doing that for a long time.
Okay, good.
I will make it so.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
It's always nice to hear that it's still lower than the median for the previous contracts when you put it out to bid. So it sounds, you're doing good by our town. But one of the things that I remember discussing in the Finance Committee about this is that the other piece is that if you put it out to bid, we'd probably end up not getting as good a deal about recycling because the cost of recycling, no?
No, recycling is not, this isn't the recycling contract that we were talking about.
But there's a pickup for recycling.
This is the pickup for recycling. The deal that we have right now, so we went to the entire region, and Penobscot County helped us do a survey of what everybody else was paying for curbside transportation and recycling, curbside trash and curbside recycling transportation. And what we learned is that we were getting the best deal. So we were not getting a market deal, which is why we went back and asked for it again.
So that's, that's great. You're doing great by our citizens. Thank you. So this is somewhat tangential, but it's in the same ballpark, which is, Megan mentioned she's an English teacher. I am an environmentalist, and I am an environmental scientist. And one of the things I want to do in my participation on this board is to think about the big picture. And the big picture is that as much as people feel good about recycling, the things we put into recycling and get picked up and that we as a town pay to have picked up do not have a market. And the people who are in our town often feel very good about their recycling. And if we were to say to them at some point, oh, just throw it all in the trash, people would be quite upset because they feel good about recycling. But if there's no place for that recycling to go, there's no market, there's no requirement that people use recycled materials, we haven't done due diligence to educate our population that we are part of that problem. We in Orono, that we pick up trash and we pick up recycling separately with which implies that we're doing something with that recycling of value. But we can't do anything of value with it if there's no market.
If I may.
Yeah.
The value is, as we move into the new era where we're tipping at fiber right, one of the values is that the tip fee for recycling is 50% the cost of the tip fee for municipal solid waste. So clearly there is some market somewhere. It's just not as robust as it once was. And right now we're paying $0 per ton to tip that waste. And on July 1st, it will go to $35 a ton as opposed to $70 a ton. So there is some value to us, and I think we've also spent an awful lot of time trying to educate the public about our single sort recycling. And markets all have cycles, and we keep hoping that we're at the bottom of this cycle and we will begin to move up. And when we move up, that will be reflected in revenue that we get back from the fiber right facility in the recycling as well. So it's there. I'm not quite ready to completely upend the way we do things. I think we need to see how the market.
Oh, I don't think that we should upend the way we should do things, but because China is now refusing to take recycling it used to take, and that's one of the reasons we're now paying to tip it as opposed to just being able to have not pay to tip it. I'm not so much of an optimist. I don't know that things will get better. I think that things with the recycling markets may get worse. And so I think you guys did you've done great education getting people to go from the sorted to the single sort. And so mostly what I was suggesting is that as a council, it might be part of what we might do is to try to do some education to the public about the next step is not just going from sorted to single sort. The next step is to be very diligent about reducing our total waste in the town, reducing the amount we recycle, that we would then be able to say, look, Orono is a green town, and one of the ways we're a green town is we actually throw less things away because we've encouraged our population to buy fewer things that are in non-recyclable and even in recyclable containers that we bring. We're the kind of town that brings our bags to the grocery store. We're the kind of town that brings things to fill as opposed to buying disposable containers. So this was, as I said, it was tangential in the sense I want to support what you've done, but I thought because it does mention recycling that I would love to see our town move to the next step. We have the university here, and we have a resident that studies recycling and waste. So there could be a student project on that. I don't know exactly how we could do that, but as opposed to not mentioning it, I'd like to mention that would be a value, I think, to our town to try to encourage lowering our waste and lowering our quote recycling.
Great. Thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll take a vote on Order 1822. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Order 1823, order approving a Class 3 Vinous-only liquor license and Vito's license for Nest Coffee LLC, 24 Main Street. I'll take a motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
All right. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I think we answered them at the public hearing. I will take a vote on Order 1823. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Moving on to committee and representative reports. Is that what we? Sure. And We'll let Megan start.
Should I do all of them at the same time?
No, they're getting prepared.
Okay, okay. So as a representative to the Orono Historical Society, we have some exciting new additions to Town Hall. There are some display cases out in the next room. The intent is to fill them with things that are relevant to Orono history and community. The Orono Historical Society will be using at least one of those cases to create displays of some of the items that they have in their collection. So that's a really wonderful thing, because they haven't really had a permanent space to display items in a while. I mean, not that I'm aware of, anyway. So that's some wonderful news to report. And then, so for the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee, we actually met twice since the last meeting, full meeting. So a very brief update, and again, all of these meetings are available on the internet, on our YouTube channel, or on the town website in audio if they're committee meetings. But so vernal pools, we talked about those again. We're in a holding pattern with vernal pools. We're waiting for the ordinance vote until the DDA has been reviewed, the designated development area, and it'll be vetted in committee again before it moves forward. The land use maps we discussed, but we voted already on that, so I won't talk about it. We talked about property maintenance ordinances at both meetings. And so essentially we're in one of many phases to go through that. One of the things that we spoke about, because our town planner wisely broke this up into sort of three main categories, we discussed the external property category at our last meeting. We reviewed some of the changes to definitions, adding language about rodent infestation or harborage, and had quite a lot of spirited discussion about that. I'd recommend listening to that if I were you. We heard about sewer overflows. We heard about the old Public Works garage is in the home stretch with DEP, which is great. Candidates night. Tomorrow, that was part of one of those meetings as well. Tomorrow night, right here. And if you can't attend in person, you can email or call in your questions for the candidates. You can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on television. It's great. Let's see. I don't think anything else from the second report. There's an agreement for the sanitary sewer evaluation that's in place with the University of Maine. We talked a bit about what to expect from waterfront concerts and UMaine on Maine Day, that concert. And I suspect we'll hear more about that at a later date. All right.
I would just, for people who are thinking, what does this have to do with comp plan implementation? At the end of each committee meeting on the agenda is a brief town manager's report, which is where some of those items have come from.
I probably should have mentioned that, but it's too many.
You were on a roll.
It's just too many. There were too many meetings back to back that I have notes on.
As long as you didn't step on finance and community development.
I didn't, not a whisper.
Oh, community development.
Quite closely to the
Well, would finance like to go next?
Sure. We had a long meeting on Wednesday morning, February 7th. We discussed a proposal to purchase and upgrade streetlights in the town, provide a better quality of lighting, as well as, in the long run, be financially more efficient. We're moving that to a feasibility study, and we'll hear more about that as the year goes on. We reviewed the proposed contract for curbside solid waste and recycling that we have approved tonight, and we vetted that for you. We talked about winter weather response. We had a brief budget, FY19 budget update on the timetable and when things will be coming out, which is very soon. We reviewed the financial reports, which looked fine, and we had a brief town manager's report.
Great, thanks. Community development.
Sure. We had our Community Development Committee meeting was on January 25th. The main issue that came up was discussion of the possibility or the of the sort of drive-through facility land use options here, looking at the Village Commercial District. There are several key points. We have them available in other parts, Commercial 1 and 2 districts. But the key points for consideration with drive-throughs, basic or acreage, as in a minimum lot size to have one, traffic flow, and then the purpose and use of the drive-through. And currently, drive-through restaurants are only allowed in planning board approval in C1 and C2. The review criteria was mostly concerning how it would impact neighboring properties and traffic circulation, not just right there at the location of any given, possible site of that, but also in the greater area. I have a few notes here on what we talked about with, for example, with the acreage, Bangor has a minimum lot size of 0.5 acre, and I think we have maybe 6 or so that might fit that criteria now, existing lots.
We have a handful.
A handful, yeah. But basically, to ensure traffic management, the minimum impact, traffic studies would have to be done to identify current flow at peak and off-peak times, and comparing that to peak and off-peak times for any proposed business. Out of the several options, the one that is sort of being expanded and considered more is a tiered system, basically, where they would, any business perhaps interested in this, and this is just something being considered. Right? Am I doing too many details here?
No, I'm just kind of following you.
You're following, making sure she hasn't hit the X buzzer yet, and just like it. But basically ensuring that a property would meet the minimum lot size that was deemed appropriate, that they would provide a traffic study, and then also provide a queuing analysis, which means can the property handle the load of cars and traffic that would be coming through that. And then if not, then just look at a design possibly to meet a default 14 vehicle queue, which is what the DOT uses. So anyway, they're pursuing that possibility, and then we're also looking at maybe seeing if that should be applied to C1 and C2 as well, or what exactly the appropriate use of that is. So we learned a lot about drive-throughs. It was pretty interesting, and that was the main thing on that issue, so on that meeting.
Great. Is there any other liaison that would like to report on anything? No? Okay. We're moving on to future agenda items. Oh, by the way, thank you very much. Those were very good reports. Future agenda items and items of concern. Megan?
I have none.
I have none. Judy? Last, you got 1 month?
Sliding out quiet.
Oh, come on.
Tom, you said no.
I said no.
Tom? Laura?
I have 2.
Okay.
I have 2, and I see that one of the 2 made it into the notes that are right here on our table. So I will pass mine out. So my 2 are on both sides of this paper that I'm passing out. So I'll start with the first one is an introduction of a future agenda item, which is the discussion of a need for a year-round or either year-round and covered, or just a covered for partially covered or part of the year location for the Orono Farmers Market. So Elizabeth Johns, who's here in the chambers tonight, brought this to me, and she and I have been discussing it for a while, and so she went to the farmers market to talk about it this weekend and do an informal survey of the people who are participants that were selling, that had stalls at the market this weekend. Just to make an informal survey. In the course of doing that, she learned that there's actually a committee among the farmers market vendors where that's one of the things that they have that they've been talking about. So my interest as a citizen of Orono, who have in the past lived in towns that had farmers markets, and like I lived in Ithaca, New York 30 plus years ago, and there was a great farmers market with a covered location. And I love the farmers market here. I think it's amazing. I have been going, when I was running for office, I went to hand out my cards, and the first thing I'd say to people is, are you from Orono? And most of the people said no. And so it shows that this is a hub. When we have a farmer's market, people come from elsewhere to come to Orono, which is good for Orono. And I would like to be a very good host to the Orono Farmers Market, and I didn't see anything when I read the comprehensive plan that said that's one of our goals, is to figure out what we do, is it, yeah, okay, sorry, I missed that, but that's, I'm thinking, so that this is the list, so I'll read it out loud, that there's a committee, and so this is not from the committee, this is Elizabeth and I talking, and Elizabeth doing some informal surveying. So the things that came up that we need to think about was the location, should be centrally located and have good visibility. That vendors say they depend on people passing by, seeing the market in operation, to know about it or be reminded when market day is. And the same year-round location would enable customers to know exactly where it is all year long. Marketing, an indoor space would need good signage and continuing publicity. Space, a winter's market, the current size is about 15 vendors, and there's usually about 200 customers. And that's not any data collection. That was an informal, someone, presented. But each member probably needs around 10 by 10 space for their, at minimum, and some walkway space, and so that you have to. Anyway, unloading, a place for vendors to park and unload, double doors, no steps. It'd be great if the market were on ground level, but ramps are good. And wouldn't want it to be too far from where they'd have to park if it was an indoor space. And parking has to be adequate for customers. Number and size of, number of spaces not specified. Need to have snow removal for the winter time. Heating is a consideration because some vendors can't bring their things to market right now when it's freezing out. And so if it were indoors, that have it warm enough that people would not have their produce being frozen. Examples, Skowhegan has a greenhouse that houses their market in the winter, and they also can leave the tables up all winter because they're the only people that use it. And I gave my example of the Ithaca, New York Farmers Market. So affordability is a large topic, and so who would pay for this, and what would the cost be, and that's huge, but something to be considered. And if we had an indoor space, there'd still be vendors that would want an outdoor space, like the fish truck wouldn't want to come indoors. So that's a consideration. And one of the people mentioned what I think is quite true, is that it'd be nice to have a place for people to sit and socialize. And that's, now it meets in parking lots, and so people do socialize, but nobody sits down. And in other markets I've been to, there's space in the Augusta Farmers Market. They have it's just a pole barn kind of thing at a park, but it has places for people to sit down. And also people bring their dogs, so if it's indoors, if it's completely indoors, that might be a discouragement to some people who go there regularly right now. And of course we or the committee, or a combination of the town and the committee, should be interviewing people about what they think, the customers. I'm just one customer. So these are all suggestions, and this list may not address all the essential items, but I wanted to bring that up as something that I'd love to talk about or have the town look into.
Okay, great.
Anyone from the farmers market want to make a comment?
We'll move on to public comments in just a second.
Oh, okay.
But Sam, did you have any?
Second item?
I have a second item.
Oh.
Okay, so the second item, which is on the paper from the town manager, that says counselor inquiry. And so on my sheet, I'll read from my sheet first, is that my first meeting was in November, and at that first meeting I went to, there was the discussion of the K-5 after-school rec program, and the agreement to have a short-term agreement with the university rec program for them to manage it for a year and a half, to see if that would be a long-term way to change it. When they were talking about the details of how many kids are in it, and if more kids got involved that weren't from Orono, that the university gets to keep all the revenue from those additional children, then I started to ask about what kind of accommodations were being made for children who were on free and reduced lunch, because I just read a report that said 30% of the Asa Adams Elementary School kids were on free and reduced lunch. So if you would assume that the same number of kids who need lunch assistance would also need assistance to participate in after-school programs, including the K-5 after-school rec program, that part of the agreement we make with the university, which of course the agreement for the 18 months was just about to be approved, and it was approved. So my request was that over this time period of the 18 months, could we look into ways in which we would, as a town, support our families that do not have the cash to have their kids participate, but we know what a great thing it is for those kids to participate, and that's the kind of town I think we want to be. So, so what the informal response was that they had about 1 to 3 children of approximately 100 that are participated in this K through 5 after school rec had been, you know, basically they tapped someone on the shoulder and said, I need some help, and so those kids got this informal scholarship. So, so it turns out, I just knew, maybe I came late, I don't remember, but basically when it came time to approve the meeting minutes in December, I didn't see that hadn't really been discussed or listed in the meeting minutes. None of the details of the exchange were in the meeting minutes. So I wanted to put this in the record that my recollection was I asked to have that reviewed and to figure out how the town was going to address that. Because Orono should support the participation of all children, including those whose families are experiencing economic hardships. Providing opportunities for all our town's children to be involved in recreational activities is clearly important for the short and long-term health of these children and is certainly in line with the ethics of the town. So it turns out that because Sophie heard me and that I was interested in getting more details, she's provided details. So do you want to talk about this?
Works, yeah.
Isn't that part of our council meeting after this meeting?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that more, I thought. Is that correct? Isn't it on the agenda for our council meeting? No?
No, we
Oh,
have
okay.
a council workshop after this,
Yeah.
Judy. It's the charter and
Okay.
what how council wants to engage the president
That's
search.
right.
So usually when we bring up items of concern, so you've got them and we'll put them on an agenda as soon as they fit, right? So you've done a lot of research, Lori, and that's fantastic. And I don't think any of us have had a real chance to absorb what Sophie has responded to you with either. So Sophie, you'll schedule it into a community development probably?
I just want to say one thing. I think it's important to state that Sophie does the research on things, and we bring that up. And I think it's a matter of waiting for that to be presented. You know, as you had your form here done, your research done, but also some of the information was here. So I just think it's important that there's no misconception that when we make requests that they're dropped. And I'm afraid that may have been sort of an unintended implication of what was said. But I think it's great the information you brought. Yay farmers markets and yay helping kids out. So, but just as far as the system that we have, I think Sophie's doing a fine job with that.
I am completely impressed with everything that gets done by this town, and I didn't see it in the minutes from December, and I emailed and I didn't hear back, and I asked for it to be on this agenda, and I didn't see it on this agenda. So I brought it to make sure that it got followed up, because things drop out of people's consciousness. So it turns out that it didn't drop out of her consciousness, it just wasn't on the agenda because it's not, maybe this is not where it needs to go. But I'm new here, so I was never told where it was going to need to go or when it would show up, and so I made sure it's in the record.
Yep. And it's appropriate for you to bring it up at this point, and then it usually gets put on to a committee meeting to start the process. So thank you very much for bringing that up. Sam, did you have any items? Okay. All right. Public petitions. I don't think we have any. Public comments. Susan?
Good evening, Susan Whitmore. I'm often told that what I've got to say is often dark and heavy. So here's some more doom and gloom and dark and heaviness. I'd like to say condolences to the friends and family of Alexi Adams, the 19-year-old who is found deceased in a snowbank. And I was really perturbed about that incident, simply because literally 3 weeks ago, I politely confronted another 19-year-old female whom had been provided with alcohol. She mentioned getting intoxicated. And I reminded that 19-year-old that the legal drinking age is 21 years of age. To follow up that interaction, I also reported to authorities that someone within the Bangor metropolitan vicinity, meaning including Orono, that adults have been providing intoxicating substances to children. And considering the epidemic that's occurring throughout the United States, I think that's a huge problem. Within the years ago, I was awaiting public transportation and got approached by a young man who, throughout the day, got acquainted with the person, and that person had been provided with street drugs at the age of 9. And when I met him, he was 21 and had to be on medications to not be on street drugs, and goes into cardiac arrest brought on by emotional distress by recounting his traumatic life. And I voiced this just to remind the adults within the Bangor metropolitan vicinity, it's illegal to provide alcohol to a person under the age of 21. Within the context of alcohol, a person under the age of 21 is legally considered a minor. The person may be 18, legally an adult, maybe 19, legally adult, maybe 20, legally adult. However, in the context of law, in the context of alcohol, under the age of 21, that is still a minor. As for children, those under the age of 21.
Susan, do you have anything happy to tell us at this point?
I will in a moment.
Okay.
You know, if I only had a nickel for every time someone asked me that question throughout my lifetime. I was kicking and screaming 20 years ago. People saying, "Shut up, Mom." Now, I've been called the B word, the C word, the every word in the alphabet word about the topic of discussion. It's kind of an exhausting topic myself, not my favorite, though well acquainted. Been kicking and screaming about it. It's all fun and games until someone gets hurt. Well, guess what? Someone died. That's a young United States citizen. Someone provided her with alcohol. If someone who is 21 years of age had not provided her with alcohol, she might still be alive. You know, those are controlled substances. They're not being controlled. And I myself am outraged about it. People have asked me to buy for them. Instead of buying alcohol for them.
Susan, thank you, but we've got your point now.
The more pleasant thing to say
Yeah.
is, I hope everyone has a happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And kids, wait till you're 21.
Thank you very
Might
much.
save your life.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else wish to comment?
Hi, Elizabeth Johns, Forest Avenue. Lori and I have had this conversation about the Orono Farmers Market. I'm new to this process, so I'd appreciate it if somebody could explain to me what happens next. Where does this go from here?
It will be looked at, we have looked at this, we've had this discussion several times, I remember, in the comp plan, but Sophie will look at what we have for agenda items and put it on an agenda as soon as there's an available space. She may even know in her head, I don't know.
I don't know in my head, because I need to talk to council about how we're going to wrap in the budget, and if people are willing to take on more meetings, or if you want me to try to fold the budget in. I can tell you it won't be on the January 22nd Community Development, February 22nd Community Development meeting agenda, because that is already more than full. I'm kind of glad Tom's not here, because I can sometimes eke out longer meetings. He's
February 22nd, you said?
It won't be then.
Okay. So it will be on a committee meeting. As soon as we can find a space for it, we will put it on. It will be publicly advertised. It will be on the website.
It will be community development too.
It will be, I would assume it would be community development. And Lori can notify you of the
And
committee.
members of the public can come and provide input on the
Absolutely.
discussion.
Yep, yep. Yes.
So I'm not sure. We might be able to get it on quicker if we look and see what the comp plan implementation strategy was, and if the strategy is there, which I think it was during the revision, we might put it on comp plan simply because once we do property maintenance and get that into the pipeline to be enacted, then we'll have the free time. Well, I don't know if we call it free time.
I will caution you from history that we're about to hit budget season, and we're going to be very, very busy making those decisions. I'm not sure that we would be able, I mean, it's going to cost money, so I'm not sure that we want to put that out farther, I think. But it definitely was in the comp plan. And as most things, it boils down to what can we afford.
Perhaps what would make sense to put on comp plan implementation coming up is a brief discussion just about what the comp plan says, if there's already a timeline there, and then you guys can decide where you would want that to fall in the priorities.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry to cause you so much confusion. Laura, you will keep Elizabeth up to speed with where we decide to put it. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Right.
Would you like to hear from us at all?
Sure, this public comment, so.
Okay. My name's Mark Guzzi, and I'm market manager for the Orono Farmers Market. I've been a member at least 20-something years now, and we have a pretty limited, well, I'll say this. It is true that the Orono Winter Market is considering finding an indoor location. We've talked about this on and off over the years. It's sort of, I can't think of exactly the right word, but we're kind of a unique winter market in the fact that we do it outside. The members who participate in that market have actually not, they felt like possibly our outdoor location has been an advantage to us over the years. Many of them participate in indoor markets. There's lots of differences in doing a farmer's market indoors versus outdoors. But, I mean, let's be realistic. It may be an idea whose time has come. That said, we'd be very interested. We've kind of had a limited relationship with the town of Orono, partially because 7 months out of the year we're down at the university on university land. It sort of evolved in a, sort of natural, organic way, being downtown, that, there hasn't really been a lot of organization surrounding our presence downtown. But I think that probably, and I've always been hesitant, because we find that sometimes when we reach out with ideas like this, we end up opening up a giant can of worms and make things more complicated than they need to be.
You're talking to town council, you're whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of worms, Mark.
We know that, but it could be that now is the time that we strengthen that relationship and work together with our inclination to be serious about looking for an indoor location. And it doesn't, there are so many possibilities out there. It doesn't necessarily need to be complicated. It doesn't necessarily need to be a can of worms. If the town is interested in helping us find and identify some possible indoor locations for us to do the market, that may just be a start. So, I mean, I could go on and on, but I'd say this: keep us in the loop, and we would love to be involved in all of the conversations that you guys want to have about this. I would say that.
Absolutely will.
Thank you.
Yep. Susan?
I just wonder if the university field house, I mean, sometimes they host events, would that be too much of a mess for them?
No.
Or some building?
I think one of the things you run into is that the, they have things that are planned, and in the times that we have worked with the farmers market, what we have heard is that consistency, stability, not moving them around is important. And so when the university puts on an event, which happens periodically throughout the year where the whole field house is taken over, I think on a weekend, I think you run into some issues. I would think the farmers market would have issues with that.
This may be a big one, perhaps a construction project such as putting a kind of like a partial roof over one of the new parking lots, such as the lot that's across from the community center, kind of like a dry dock, I think some people call it. But
Yep. Well, that's all good suggestions. Thank you. And I'm sure, Mark, that we will keep you in the loop, and Elizabeth in the loop, as we move this to a discussion. All right. If there's another public comment?
It's really intimidating being up here. I'm Justin Norman, college student. I am Justin Norman. I'm a college student. I've been here for 3 years, going on my 4th now. And I will preface this with, I don't know if this is the correct place to bring this up, although I've been to code enforcement and the police department, and it seems that everywhere I go, I reach dead ends, so here I am. I have been having a problem with Orono's House of Pizza's noise. So I guess I'll just go into my qualms. From January 6, 2017 to November 2nd, 2017, there were a total of 23 noise complaints filed. I have them all here. Of those noise complaints, 2 of them measured the volume at 65 to 69 decibels at the property line. Then there were 6 more of those noise complaints where the officers registered loud noise, especially loud bass. To quote one of them, or quote 2 of them, one of them said that the building was vibrating. That's how they expressed it. And the other one said that I could hear the loud bass coming from the building. And a group of individuals came out of the building and made comments about how loud it was to the officer. So the legal limit for noise in a residential area from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., which is when all these noise complaints were made, is 50. So if they're measuring it, if when they measure it, it's 65, which is, I think, like 15%. Yeah, well, it's 15. No, I don't know. 30% higher than the limit, then I imagine that many of the other times when that found it unreasonable was also above the limit, considering the limit is actually lower than we'd anticipate. So thus far, after all these noise complaints, literally nothing has been done, no matter who I contact. But principally, I'm interested in Section 4 of the legal code on the town ordinances here. They require a special amusement permit in order to play music and sell alcohol at the same time. And under that special amusement permit, it says that municipal officers may, after a public hearing by notice to interested parties, suspend or revoke any special amusement permits which have been issued under this article on the grounds that the music, dancing, or entertainment so permitted constitutes a detriment to public health, safety, or welfare, or so violates any municipal ordinances, articles, bylaws, and rules and regulations, to which I think that there is ample evidence of.
Jason, thank you very much. We will have to take your information.
Do you want it?
And
For a point of order, when somebody has an issue with a department and they go to that department head and they don't get what they want, the next step is to go to the town manager. And while I responded as the public information person to Justin's request, what he asked me for, I delivered. And there was no other feedback from him. So if I have staff that are not responding in a way that he thinks is appropriate, I will tell you that based on his freedom of access request, without even looking further, I had directed the police department to begin the noise analysis, which takes time to do. I have not heard back from them, so I need to figure out if we've dropped the ball or if we have a noise analysis that's been done. But normally things wouldn't go directly from a department complaint to the council to do something about, but rather be referred back to my office.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not exactly sure what the legal process is here, so I'm
sure. No, and that's what I meant, is that we need to collect it, and so I'm sure that if you, Sophie, do you have his contact information, or do you need anything from him?
I think we responded via email.
Yeah, at one point.
At one point, and as long as that hasn't changed, I'm all.
It has not.
Okay, then I think we're all set.
Sophie will look into it, and somebody will get back to you.
Should I contact you directly at some point in the intervening time? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Do I remember correctly that the last time we reviewed their licensing, there was a discussion about how the noise complaints had been addressed? So what we're learning now is perhaps we need to look at that again.
We're trying to figure out whether or not they were addressed sufficiently, and I think a period went prior to the hearing, the council hearing, that we thought that they had been addressed. So I talked at length with the chief when the request came in, simply because we don't often get people who want reams of material without me knowing that there's a problem. And that's when we decided we would do the full-blown noise analysis. And the issue is, in order to be able to do it fairly, we've got to pick certain times, and it's not fair to Justin for us to do it when we're at our slowest, which would be a Monday or Tuesday night. I'm going to guess his issues are probably Thursday, Friday, Saturday evening. So it was a matter of trying to get our staffing to a point where we could devote the time to do that. I thought it had happened. If it hasn't, I will make sure it does.
And thank you for bringing that. I mean, I know it's like, what do we do? And it's kind of like, welcome. But thank you for bringing that up and speaking up.
Well, that work invested by FM. It's paying off. Yeah. All right. I will take a motion to adjourn because we've got another meeting
I have
afterwards.
one comment.
Yeah, okay.
I want to thank you, Susan, for bringing up the memory of the young woman who died in our town recently, and let you know that we are aggrieved as a town council and we have a responsibility as a town council that's in a town that has a college and that has gotten a reputation as a place that people who do not go to the University of Maine choose to come to. So if you think of it from the business sense for the farmers market, I'm saying it's great when people choose to come to Orono. And yet, when people choose to come to Orono to do the things that are not legal and are not healthy for them, that's something that we are certainly concerned about, and we are very sad for this young woman's family, and sad that she did not survive her adventure in Orono. And, excuse me?
Misconduct of both sides.
I don't know that Orono is misconduct. I just wanted to thank you for bringing it up, because there was not I didn't feel that we should say it when we're saying acknowledging, although I do acknowledge that our police handled it, and I thank them for handling it. But it's a very sad thing, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, because it should be recorded that we do think about this, and it's a concern to us as a town council.
Yeah. I will take a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Thank you very much. Everyone have a good evening. And council, we have another meeting.